Okay, everybody, welcome to this episode of Coffee and Cash Flow. My name is Tim Benson, your host. I own NetScore, one of the premier online marketers here in the United States and Canada. And I have a very distinguished guest with us today, Mr. Jeffrey Lieser of Lieser Skaff Alexander here in Tampa, Florida. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thank you.
And Mr. Lieser, it looks like you're at a conference. Tell us a little bit about that.
I am. I'm at a conference in Orlando. It's the International Council of Shopping Centers conference, and they have an annual conference here in Orlando. And it's been a few years since I've been to it, actually, and I hope the background noise isn't too much. But
No, it's great.
We represent at the law firm a lot of shopping centers and do a lot of commercial tenant and landlord work. So this is a chance for us to see some of our clients and learn about, what's going on in the industry and meet new people as well. And so it's also just kind of great marketing generally. So
that's fantastic. And for all of our listeners, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Lieser's law firm here. So Lieser Skaff Alexander, you guys are located in Tampa, right?
That's correct.
And it looks like you guys mainly focus on business, commercial litigation, transactions, business law, real estate law, and employment law. Now, what's interesting is one of my other businesses is a music school. I'm also part of a group that does coaching for music schools all over the world. And two of our big things that we focus on is how to structure our business correctly and employment law, because we employ a lot of contractors and some W-2 employees. And as you probably are well aware, the rules and stipulations of that are so different and can vary state by state. So that's something we have to pay attention to as business owners, is how we treat our employees and contractors. So that's very interesting.
Sure, absolutely.
And one thing about Mr. Lieser and his background, here's what I really like. I was reading on your bio, and I'm going to read a little bit for our viewers here. So Mr. Lieser is a co-founder of Lieser Skaff Alexander. Jeff concentrates his practice on complex business and real estate litigation. He also serves as class action counsel and as Florida Supreme Court certified circuit civil mediator. In addition, Jeff is a reserve judge advocate in the U.S. Army JAG Corps, where he holds the rank of major. He previously deployed to Iraq with the 1st Heavy Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division, Devil's Brigade, and served as the brigade's legal representative in arresting and jailing violent extremists who attacked against U.S. forces. Jeff prosecuted such terrorist defendants in Iraq criminal trials, obtained record-breaking results, including 5 convictions. Jeff has received multiple awards for military service, including the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. So it's an honor to have you on our show. And before we officially begin, I just want to say thank you for your service and thank you for all that you do. I personally,
thank you very much for saying that. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it.
So Jeff, the main focus of our show, and I've done a lot of interviews with attorneys all over the United States. So the first thing I like to bring up is we are in a different world now economically than we were, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. No longer, it seems, that we are in a world of a single career income for most people. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Yeah, I agree with that generally.
And what I mean by that is I say the 30-year careers, have they increased or decreased over the last 20 years? People staying at one company, getting taken care of for the long term. How has that evolved over the last few decades?
Well, I think that's kind of a dinosaur of the past by and large, and most people are going to be much more mobile in today's job market.
Absolutely. And we have this rise of and kind of the core of this podcast is, multiple cash flows. We've heard from billionaires like Warren Buffett, Elon Musk. You have to have multiple streams coming in. It's you really got to develop your skill set. And I'm sure you see a lot of that in your day-to-day company. People coming in from all walks of life, whether it's real estate or business. Yeah. What sort of dynamic do you deal with on a daily basis or monthly, yearly basis? What kind of entrepreneurs and people?
Well, I would say that our law firm represents everyone from an individual or a mom and pop shop all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. And in fact, both of those subsets of clients are present at this conference I'm at today. But in terms of representing clients generally, the entrepreneurial spirit is what kind of had me gravitate towards representing business owners. I just find that representing entrepreneurs, whether large or small, is extremely gratifying. Helping someone with their problems as they, clear hurdles that are necessary for them to grow and hit those goals is kind of what gets me motivated and gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, that's really great. And as somebody that does marketing for a lot of companies, we see the same thing too. So we have people that come to us and they say, Tim, I have this idea. I don't know where to start. Where do we start? If you have a client that comes to you and says, Mr. Lieser, okay, I have this idea for a lawn care. I use that analogy a lot for a local business. They don't know where to get started, and I tell them, read up on the industry, learn about yourself. But most importantly, you're going to face obstacles. And your time in the service, I want you to talk a little bit about that. I feel entrepreneurship is a personal development journey. And I'm sure you've seen many obstacles come your way. Talk to us a little bit about what are some mindset tips that you shared with people around you during that time to overcome hardship?
During the time of military service?
Yes, sir.
Well, I would say that in terms of my military service, the time period that was most important in my life was when I deployed to Iraq, and I was overseas in Iraq for about 6 months, and every day in a deployed environment brings challenges in that you're away from your home, you're living in a relatively austere environment, and so the best piece of advice in terms of just day to day is sometimes you just have to grin and bear it. Sometimes you just, and this is oftentimes the practice of law or starting up a business, it's not all going to be glamorous. There are going to be days and long stretches of time, perhaps, where you just have to put your head down and get through it, knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel, whatever that light is in your particular case. When I was deployed, the light was getting home to my family and hugging my newborn daughter. But whether it's that or whether it's looking at your bank account and knowing that there's X dollars in there, whatever that light at the end of the tunnel is for you, you got to keep your eye on the prize, because that will, hopefully get you through some of the tougher days or the tougher stretches of time.
A famous quote that Mark Cuban said was, to really develop yourself in a business mindset and being a true entrepreneur, you have to embrace the grind.
The Marines, I think it's the Marines say embrace the suck.
It's the same idea. Yeah.
Same idea. Yeah. You've got to, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. Put your head down, grin and bear it. Whatever phrase you want to throw at it, it's the same thing. There's going to be, even this weekend, this yesterday, an attorney brought something to me and it was Sunday morning at 10 and I had a whole day planned. And will you just review this one piece of this contract? We have to get it approved by the court tomorrow. 6 hours later, I was essentially rewriting the contract. And that's a Sunday before I come to this conference. Of course, I don't want to be doing that. But that's just, though, there are going to be days like that. But then there will be, several Sundays in a row where it's nothing but family time and it pays off. So, with the good comes the bad.
I definitely agree with that. So transitioning over to what you guys do on a normal basis. I know that you work with businesses, you work with real estate. Tell us a little about the real estate aspect. Are these companies looking for commercial space? Are they looking to expand? How does that work for you guys?
It kind of depends. We primarily represent commercial landlords. We also
Yeah.
represent a handful of residential landlords. When I started off, to be honest, we also represented tenants, but I found that to be oftentimes challenging to get the tenant the result that they wanted, and so it didn't. I didn't really feel great about what we were able to accomplish for that particular type of client. So anyway, I represent a lot of commercial landlords. We also represent a lot of developers and a lot of general contractors. So and the representation can include anything from drafting a contract, whether it's a construction contract or a lease or an amendment to one of those documents, or it can include litigation. And real estate litigation is obviously a very broad, a very broad practice area. But the areas that we primarily practice in are going to be construction litigation, eviction work, foreclosure work, and code enforcement and zoning, matters like that. That'll generally capture a lot of the litigation that we do.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I do own the building we're in for one of our businesses, but beyond that, Jeff, real estate is sort of foreign to me. I get that, you can purchase lots, you can build stuff, but that's about the extent of it. So I definitely need the help of professionals like yourself to guide me through that. No
Sure,
question.
sure. Well, and that's what I always tell, when you were earlier talking about, we were talking a little bit about entrepreneurs, and I've said this before on a similar program, where I always tell entrepreneurs and startups that you're going to invest all this time and money, and you're going to make sure you're going to do everything you can to dot all your I's and cross all your T's. And if it was a piece of real estate you were investing in or that you had purchased, you would need to get insurance for that real estate. And getting legal services early on in the process is the same type of thing as insurance. You're ensuring that your efforts and your hard work are going to be protected to the extent they can be. Now, of course, nothing is fail-proof, but you are spending that money on the front end and doing everything you can to ensure that you are as protected as you possibly can be is money well spent. And it's really no different than getting insurance, whether it's business loss insurance or property insurance. It's the same concept.
Fantastic. So a few questions remaining here. With those folks that you work with on a normal basis, what is the number one area that you see that you often need to help them out with, if you had to pick one? And that's sort of a broader question, but anything that comes to mind.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes to what I was just saying. Unfortunately, when people come to me and they need help with potential litigation, whether they are in the middle of a partnership dispute or they need to pursue a vendor that owes them money, or a subcontractor that has not done what it was supposed to do on a job site, the theme, if you will, is that lack of early intervention or the lack of legal services on the front end. So if there is a theme that runs throughout, that's often it. Especially with smaller or mid-sized companies, it's not making sure that contract is robust and it covers all the contingencies and you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. Oftentimes the business terms have that type of holistic approach, and the entrepreneur type of client has been hawkish about ensuring the best financial terms or business terms, but not necessarily thought through all the things that can lead to legal risk and liability. And so that's what I see the most, kind of as the theme of many of our clients.
So they just don't think through the what ifs maybe enough as they should, and you're kind of there to be their safety net in some respects, I would say.
Correct. I mean, and it can happen in any context. It can happen, in a lease negotiation, or let's say it's a letter of intent, right? Like, a shopping center conference, and so a lot of new tenants, a tenant and a landlord at the front end of a deal might negotiate basic terms of a letter of intent, and everyone, including the brokers, are pushing to get the deal done, and they're just focusing on the major deal points: square footage, price per square foot, the common area maintenance costs, the taxes, the insurance, all of these things. But they might not think about other things that are really critical to either side, such as are there certain uses that are exclusive to other tenants in the shopping center? Are there certain zoning or easement type of rules that need to be followed that the tenant might run afoul of if they're operating their current business? There's all sorts of finer deal points, and that can often be where the legal liability is lurking, unfortunately. And oftentimes there's a rush to get into the deal, whether it's a lease or a business contract or a partnership, and there's kind of that honeymoon period, or the excitement of a deal, and getting into the nitty-gritty is oftentimes miserable and not very fun. But that's really what's needed on the front end, and to bring in experienced counsel to assist with that, to make sure that, again, you're mitigating against future losses, really.
That absolutely makes sense. And as you were talking about it, it's like, you're right. We get so excited about the shiny new thing, and then we don't want to go through the page 61 of the bullet point and all of the addendums that we have to be aware of. So I understand that completely. Two final questions. So we understand that business ownership is a personal journey, and it's where you start. You're not going to be the same person 5 years, 10 years into it. So the question I always ask my guests is, number one, every day, what is your why? If you had to pick, what is your why? What would it be?
Well, why do I own why do I own my own law firm?
Yeah. Why do you do what you do? Yeah.
Well, I guess there's probably two different questions. Why do I own my own law firm? The answer to that is because I love the entrepreneurial side of what I do. That's why I own my own law firm. Now, why do I do what I do? Why am I a lawyer? Why did I, choose a career where I'm helping others either through, serving as their lawyer or their counselor or their advisor? It's because it is truly a profession where you are able to do that. You are truly able to assist others, get them through and shepherd them through what might be one of the darkest periods of their lives. And that is, something that is extremely rewarding, even on the most stressful days. So I think, it's kind of a two-part question, and hopefully those answers sufficiently respond to the questions.
No, that's great. I love it. And my final question is, so quick backstory before I ask it. So I graduated college early 2000s. I went on tour with my band, and I was always of the employee mindset. I had to work hours to generate income, right? And one day, my bass player, I catch him reading this book, and he said, "Tim, you got to read this book." And I read it, and it literally completely changed my mindset. And that book was Cash Flow Quadrants from Robert Kiyosaki. And it literally, the concepts he presented were completely new to me. And so I say that, and that changed my life. That one book was the seed that changed my entire life. If you had a book that you could recommend to our listeners that did the same for you, or even something that you felt was very impactful, what would that be?
A book.
Or a resource.
Sure. That's a tough one, to be honest. I don't know that there is a book per se. In the legal industry, there's an organization. I don't want to necessarily be a plug for them, but
Sure.
Let me say this: there are organizations in the legal industry that really espouse and do a good job of teaching what I think it is that book that you read was probably largely talking about, and that is being a revenue multiplier, and forming a business that is multiplying various streams of revenue. And there are certain law firm consultant type companies that do a very good job of that. And I've been to a few of their conferences, and they're very big on, making sure that you're building something that's not just you, right? Because if you get hit by a bus or whatever the case may be, you still want to make sure that the company is thriving, that there is revenue and profits being realized. And so there's not one particular source. I would say that concept in general is what has, helped me kind of reframe how I look at the law firm. I think there's a lot of law firms, there's a lot of lawyers that are, one or two man shops. And if they're a two-man shop, they might be a quote unquote kind of eat what you kill. And really they are it, right? They might have a paralegal or a legal assistant helping them. But if they decide to take 3 weeks off of work, well, that means they only have 1 week of billables that month. And that means that, they're only going to have a quarter of what they would normally have in a month. And to me, that is not sustainable. And as much as I enjoy what I do, I enjoy equally so the process of that revenue generation and the entrepreneurial minded growth mindset. So.
Fantastic. That's great. So before we wrap up, Mr. Jeffrey Lieser, any closing comments for our listeners?
No, I would just say, first of all, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity. I think just kind of circling back to what we said before, there are times in your life where you just have to put your head down and grin and bear it, or whatever term you want to use. There are going to be, this is not anything shocking or new, but there are going to be multiple setbacks, multiple disappointments, and especially in today's current job market, hiring the right people is oftentimes going to be, a very difficult piece of what you do. But if you stick with it and you don't get discouraged, you will get to that light at the end of the tunnel. And it's important that you just basically embrace the grind, as Mr. Cuban said. I think that if there's any one takeaway, that's probably it.
Fantastic. And where can our listeners find out more about you and your law firm?
Our webpage is www.lieser, Lieser, Skaff, SKAFF.com, www.lieserskaff.com.
Fantastic. Well, Mr. Jeff Lieser, thank you again for joining us today. It's been awesome. Thank you for sharing your insight, and we hope to have you on the show again, and I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.